What we do here is go back.
You are now listening to the Sports Lit Podcast with Shaheem Sutherland. Hey everyone, I'm Shaheem Sutherland, your host. And if you're a first-time listener, welcome to the Sports Lit Podcast. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. Today's guest is creative producer Derek King. King, a native of Wyckoff, New Jersey, played college football for Monmouth University and Florida Atlantic University. After college, King worked with several media companies and agencies such as Slam, the Players Tribune, Stick Figure Productions, Cycle, and Point 7 Labs as a creative producer. Currently, King holds the same position with creative studio Malka Media and his own company, Derek King Creations. Hey, by the way, Wyckoff, did I pronounce it right?
It's Wyckoff.
It's Wyckoff. Okay. Man, I was practicing that yesterday and today. I even Googled it. Wow.
It's all good.
Yeah, I noticed that New Jersey has a couple of cities where like the pronunciation, like if you would think you were saying it right, but it's actually wrong, like Guttenberg.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like was it it's Howden, right?
Halden.
Oh man, you see, look, but you live in Brooklyn now, right?
I was in Brooklyn. I actually recently moved to Jersey City. My girlfriend and I moved in together. We got a place in Jersey City, which is nice because my office is in Jersey City now also.
Oh, that's good. That's real convenient. Congrats.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
How's everything up there right now?
Everything is pretty wild. I've actually, a few of us were talking last night and we're just trying to compare anything like this. And we were wondering, at this point, has this surpassed kind of like what 9/11 was in terms of like, just like nationwide impact? And I don't know if it's got there quite yet, especially in like the New York area, just because, that had such a impact on everybody in this specific area. But it is really crazy. It's just like this sobering, confusing feeling. And I think everybody's feeling that way. And just the unknown and how long it's going to last for, it's bizarre. It really is. I mean, it's kind of, you go out and everybody's either wearing masks or gloves or nobody's out at all. Parks are all closed. It's a bizarre time.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, especially down here too. The parks, the beaches are closed. Doing things that we're able to do is, walk around maybe your house or your neighborhood and go grocery shopping.
Right. Get some fresh air and get back.
Yeah. I was just talking to my wife about that. She was saying that she's going crazy inside the house. So
I think everybody is.
Yeah. How are you and your family doing?
Good, man. Everything's going all right. Everybody's healthy so far, knock on wood. So
yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, we're good. My wife, she actually works at an urgent care, so.
Oh man, God bless.
Yeah, so it's taking it with a grain of salt every day, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's a tough situation to be in right now.
Yeah, but we're getting by and just remaining positive.
Amen.
But like you were saying, like the 9/11 situation, I was actually thinking about that the other day. Like New York's becoming the epicenter.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. And like to know that the U.S. already surpassed Italy, and we see what's happening over in Italy.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to get considerably worse before it gets better. I mean, they're prepping now, I don't know if you know this, but they've turned like the convention centers in the area here, they're turning into like holding centers for hospitals. And they're looking at expanding that like throughout the country to create holding centers at different college dorms or hotels throughout the country, places that have isolated individual space. But yeah, it's pretty crazy that, New York is, everybody's going through this right now. It's just wild times. It really is.
Yeah. I actually did hear something like that. I remember I watched a little 30-minute documentary on YouTube called Lockdown in Wuhan, and like they were creating like hospitals like from off the ground within like 30 days.
Yeah, exactly. I think that we're trying to get ahead so we don't have, chaos. So it seems like we're getting it done with enough time, but who knows right now? We'll see how quick this thing spread and how it starts to impact people.
It's unfortunate how everything is happening in the world, but one thing I can say that I appreciate is how this is giving us more time to spend with our family and also work on our crafts. Would you agree?
I completely agree. I think it's twofold because I think that I read this article that Udonis Haslem put out with Players Tribune. I think it was earlier this week, and he was talking about how he grew up in Liberty City, and it makes you think of how grateful some people are just to have the opportunity to get out of the house, and because they're not going home to families or to great situations. So on one part, it's like I feel super fortunate and super blessed right now that I get to have this like work from home situation and work on my craft and do some, you know, individual and tasks for myself. But at the same time, there's all these people who are dependent on going to school every day for their meal to get out of a really bad family situation, and now there's like nowhere to go for those people. So it's like it's this double-edged sword. But I have to say, from my personal experience, what I hope that comes from this is I do hope that there is some recognition that there can be alleviation from like that current capitalism, wheel spinning, right? Where it's like you don't have to show up and go to work every day to get everything done. It doesn't have to be the hamster dance. I think that, there can be some separation. There can be a better work-life balance. And I do hope that we come out of this as a country and realize that capitalism, that capitalistic wheel can still spin with a little bit better of a balance. And maybe we weren't doing it the best way that we could before. Maybe that there is a little bit more flexibility and freedom for people than we previously thought there was.
I totally agree. I actually teach right now, and right now we're doing everything virtually. And so before this even occurred, I was trying to introduce, going go more on the virtual side with my reading chair. And she was a little hesitant, but now that everything is digitalized, I feel like this allows schools to see the capabilities that educators can have with their students virtually. And like I feel like the next generation, they're more leaning towards doing everything digitalized.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's interesting because then you have to weigh the human interaction part, but I think like on the whole, the alleviation of the day to day is nice, and I think that being able to kind of figure out a better balance um, could be the ultimate goal here. I don't think we have to sway in complete one direction or in complete in the other, um, but I think finding a happy medium is really what could happen from this. And I think that would be beautiful.
Yeah. Speaking of crafts, how is work for you during this crisis?
Things are slow right now, but the company that I work for does a really great job of um, setting up isolated and kind of independent workstations. Whether you are a producer, an animator, designer, everybody is an editor, everybody's able to work remotely. So the projects that the company has going on right now are still turning because people are able to do it from their home, isolated, or in small work groups. So things are a little slower, but at the same time, the wheel is still spinning. So right now, as a producer, I'm prepping for things down the road. So it's kind of getting my T's crossed and my I's dotted for upcoming shoots, and kind of just doing the best I can to consolidate everything and making sure that things are ready to go when kind of life work and resumes a little bit of normalcy again.
That's good. I know. I'm assuming in that field, there's a lot of run and gun sometimes, and I feel like this time right now allows you to, like you said, slow things down and make sure you have everything planned ahead of time.
Yeah, exactly. Things can get busy. Things, things move really quick in production sometimes, but that's just part of the industry. So it's nice to be able to have some time where you can actually, um, put some buckets of opportunity together and then line them up and, um, you know, schedule accordingly once things kind of resume normalcy.
Okay, so let's talk about something on a lighter note now, because I think the COVID-19 can be a little bit depressing after a while. This whole time I thought you played your 4 years at FAU.
Yeah, I basically did. Um, I went to Monmouth University for a semester, um, and I transferred. I took a semester off, and then I ended up coming down to FAU. So um, I was at a different school for a little while. They had given me a scholarship opportunity. I took it. It just wasn't the right fit for me, both athletically and academically. Um, so I took a semester off, and then I ended up down at FAU.
Got it, got it. Were you playing linebacker there too as well, or because
Yeah,
yeah, okay,
yeah, yeah. I was recruited as a running back and a linebacker.
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and then I ended up picking linebacker and going to Monmouth University on a scholarship. Again, just wasn't the right work-life balance for me, or just athletic life balance for me. Um, and then I took a semester off and kind of opened up recruiting, and somehow or another, I ended up at FAU.
So which side of the ball do you like better? I know you picked linebacker, but
Yeah, I actually missed running back dearly in college, but I always loved linebacker. I always loved being a dog in high school, but I ultimately really missed running back. There's a little bit of glory that comes with it. That's fun. You know.
yeah, yeah, I saw you were kind of like a big deal. I see a couple of accolades that you picked up. First team All NBIL, first
Yeah,
team All Suburban,
yeah.
All
I was
North
all
Jersey,
county. Um,
13 All Bergen County honors. I see
yeah,
that.
yeah, all county, all North Jersey, um, all league. I had a pretty good senior season.
Okay, so you
Set my
like
high school record in tackles. Had a nice senior year.
so we kind of went backwards. We went over FAU first, then Monmouth, and then your
Yeah.
high school.
Right.
So let's go back to FAU.
All right.
While in Boca, I saw you majored in multimedia journalism.
Yep.
What were your goals while being down there?
Yeah, I always knew I just wanted to do something with my personality. I never really knew exactly what it is that I wanted to do. Like, I still don't even know what I want to do. It's a day-to-day thing, right? And um, so I always knew I wanted to do something with my personality, and I was fortunate enough to intern at ESPN Radio when I was down there with Ken Levica as well. And so, coming out of college, um, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I thought I might stay in radio for a little bit, and then a friend of mine was working in television. So I had an opportunity to get my foot in the door in production, and so moved back up to New York and did that. And then I just kind of climbed the ladder, just learning through your, mentors and kind of asking the right questions and paying attention and kind of like building my career that way, hopping around as a freelancer, creating opportunities for myself, seeing the way different people do things at different places, and kind of bounce around and take opportunities when they pop up, and um, not be afraid to move a little bit. And ultimately has led me to where I am now. So when I was back to the FAU question, you know, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Again, I knew I was going to do something with my personality. Radio was the focus at the time. I took radio classes, the classes down in Fort Lauderdale that they offered at the Fort Lauderdale campus. And I was doing that. And then, just one thing led to another, and it ended up being broadcast or production rather.
Yeah, I saw on your LinkedIn on where it said you were interning, from 2010 to 2011. Would you say that that internship helped open your eyes to what worked for you and what didn't, or you were still?
Yeah, I think I was still figuring it out, to be honest with you. I think that I would have been totally content staying in radio. I did, I did learn that, work can be fun. Those guys have a ton of fun working at ESPN radio over there. It's a great atmosphere. It's like, just going to hang out with your friends all day and kind of shooting shit and talking sports. So I did learn from that opportunity that work can be fun. Um, and there is a possibility to have like a nice work-life balance. Again, ultimately didn't end up staying in radio for at least for the time being. And I don't know that I learned so much from, what has helped me in my career now from that experience, but I definitely took a little bit from it. That's for sure.
Okay, so after the internship, I noticed, there was like a little window there. I know you also said that once you were done, you went back to New York. So
Yep.
my question for you is, was it hard to get work in the field once you graduated?
It wasn't hard at first. So at first I had an opportunity through a friend of mine who was working on the show Cake Boss,
Oh wow.
popular reality show at the time. So I was working as a production assistant on that show. And that's where I, first met some really great people who were able to kind of mentor me and show me the production, side of things. So, I'm not a classically trained film student. There's a lot of film students who go to film school and they come out and they, get jobs in the production industry. And again, I was a multimedia journalism major. So, I was a journalism major with a focus in radio and broadcast. So I had to learn on the fly, and I still am learning on the fly. Um, but so he got me that opportunity with Cake Boss at first, and that was a freelance position working on the show. That lasted for several months, a year maybe, half a year. And then I started hopping around as a freelancer and just took some opportunities that popped up. I didn't want to be a production assistant anymore. I wanted to coordinate. Ultimately, I knew I wanted to be a producer. Um, so, learning from the people, on that show, hopping around, getting opportunities with the next show. And I kind of hopped around as a freelancer in reality TV for a little while. It ultimately actually took me down to Miami for a little bit again, where I lived with Brentley Harstad, former FAU football player as
Yeah,
well.
Harstad. Okay.
Yeah. So I lived with Brent for a little while and his wife, Natalie, and their son, Travis. And so worked down there for a little bit as a freelancer as well. And then I wanted to get out of reality TV. And that's when I got my first opportunity working at a true production house, working on kind of proper um, docu style content, a little bit more in my vein. Um, and so from there, I kind of just took the opportunities as they popped up, and always kind of learn from the people around me, and continue to kind of push forward to where I am now. So it was hard to find work at first, no. But then as you can kind of continue bouncing around as a freelancer, it can be a little bit difficult because your connections and your network are everything. So you have to make sure you're constantly reaching out, keeping in touch, setting yourself up for the next opportunity. So you really just have to make sure things aren't getting stagnant. Otherwise, once you're done with one project, you're kind of in this world of what's next, which can be nice as a freelancer, but it also can be tough if it's, a while before your next income's coming in.
I'm so glad you shared that insight because I was just going to ask you to go further in depth on that because I like to create things where other people who are aspiring to do things like you are can learn from it. And I know for many, for some, like while people in school, they're like, oh, okay, once I'm done, I'm going to go freelance.
Right.
And like saying it and actually doing it are two completely different things because
Totally.
it's
Yeah.
so hard to to sometimes get that opportunity unless you do what you said, which is network.
Yeah.
And
It's really hard, to be honest with you. It's, you know, people see a freelance life on Instagram, or just like the idea of freelancing is like has so much sex appeal to it. It sounds so appealing. But it is really challenging to continue to make sure that you have set up work for yourself. The work-life balance is obviously what attracts people, but without the work part, you know, you're not getting much from it. So you really have to make sure that you're setting yourself up to have opportunities. And that's one thing I learned pretty early, is that if you're not continually doing that, boy, it can be a long road, a difficult road. So if you do want to pursue freelancing, your connections, your network is everything. So you have to constantly make sure that you're reaching out to people, constantly set yourself up for opportunities. And when you're performing whatever skill set it is that you're doing, whether it's producing or coordinating or being a journalist, you really have to make sure you're doing it as good as you can, because you want those people to recommend you, and you want as many referrals as possible. So it is a difficult road. I walked the road as a freelancer my entire career up until a year ago. I accepted a full-time job at the company I'm at now. I loved every second of being a freelancer. I had my heart set on freelancing, my life basically. But there are times in life also where other opportunities pop up, and you have to recognize that they might be the best opportunity for you at that moment too. So I'm no longer freelancing. I am working full time, but for the best right now. So freelancing is probably in my future at some point. Just love it too much not to, kind of do my own thing. But you have to recognize great opportunities when they pop up too. And, right now I'm in a really, really great one.
I totally agree. I actually, a while back, I had actually interviewed Bleacher Reporter's writer at large, Marin Fader,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about the same thing, because before she was with Bleacher Report, she was actually with a newspaper in LA called not the Orange. Ah, man, she's gonna kill me if I don't remember this. Oh man. Okay, well, I'll remember it and I'll get back to you on the name of the newspaper. But
Good.
she was telling me how when she was working at a newspaper job, it was a full-time job. But then, you know, things occurred, and then she was provided with the opportunity to basically freelance. And she was with Bleacher Report, Slam, ESPN, and a couple of other names. And she was just telling me the same thing that you just said. Like, freelancing is very meticulous, like especially like when it comes to making sure you have a steady income, because like I know what you don't really get paid time off, and it's not benefits and stuff like that, right?
Right. Yeah,
But
that's exactly right. Our country's not really set up conducively for freelancers. It doesn't really treat freelancers well, from certainly from a healthcare perspective. It can be really challenging. And also certainly from an unemployment perspective can also be really challenging. And also just sometimes payment terms are difficult, so our current system isn't really set up super conducive for freelancing, but I think that will slowly change. And I honestly, back to one of the conversations we had earlier, I honestly think that coming out of, this whole COVID-19 crisis, I think that's one of the things that actually could end up ultimately improving from this, is kind of that freelance lifestyle.
I found out what the name of the newspaper is. It was the Orange County Register.
There you go. That makes sense.
Yeah, Orange County Register. I knew I was on the right trail. But can you explain to the average person, what exactly does a creative producer and director do?
Yeah. So creative producer is kind of this arbitrary title. I am truly a senior producer, not a senior creative producer. A creative producer ultimately means that I have the ability to direct as well from time to time. So That's kind of how we define it. It's a producer role with the ability to also direct. So what is that? What exactly do I do on a day to day, or is that the question?
Yeah. So like I'm familiar with the term, but say for example, if someone is trying to figure out if they want to be a creative producer or
Yeah,
creative director, is
definitely. Um, so the biggest thing I would say as a producer, very similar advice to freelancing. Your contacts and your network are everything. You're the guy that has to make it all happen. So if there's an idea for a project, um, you're the spearhead to that vision. So you work with the director, and sometimes you are also the director. So sometimes it's really straight from your brain into reality. So you have to have the network of contacts to kind of put a project together and be able to oversee that from start to finish. So the entire pre-production process, sometimes inclusive of storyboarding, script writing, all that stuff, presentations, decks, pitches, all that stuff, all the way through the execution of the production. So hiring the right director of photography, the right audio guy, bringing on the right PAs, the right art director, any of those tasks. And again, I'm directing it as well. So bringing that vision to life as a director, and then overseeing it in post production. So overseeing the edit, making sure the story is coming together, working closely with that editor and sound designer to make sure that everything's coming out the way that clients expecting it. So that's kind of the path. It's pre-production all the way through post-production, with a ability to direct sometimes. So um, I love to direct more docu style projects. So anything that's in like that kind of like docu vein is really my sweet spot. I love interviewing people. I love getting the best out of them. It's my favorite. It's really what attracts me to being a producer is interviewing people. So that's kind of what it is.
so it's kind of like being a DP, but you're over that DP.
Well, a DP is the director of photography. So they're out there with the camera and capturing it. They're the eye of the production. The producer is kind of the glue of the production.
Got
You know,
it.
you're reaching out to all the different contacts, all the different departments. You're really putting the whole puzzle together. So the producer is kind of the glue of the project.
So I've noticed, you've worked with several agencies and companies, which you've mentioned. How was it working with so many different agencies?
I loved it. I think it's one of the things I'm most fortunate for in my professional career is having been able to freelance and bounce around to some really fun different media outlets or production companies or advertising agencies. It brought me a really unique perspective to the industry. I noticed that it was a perspective that not so many other people had. A lot of people, climb the corporate ladder, or they'll work one full-time job for years at a time. They'll move on to the next one. And then, 10 years later, maybe you worked one, two, or three jobs at three different places. So having seen 15 different production companies or media outlets or creative studios or ad agencies or whatever you want to call them over the course of X amount of years, really gave me a unique perspective to see how things can be structured, sometimes for better or for worse, to understand how different people do different things, to understand how different clients have different expectations, how to manage those clients properly, how to set expectations, what those expectations are, if they're reasonable or not. All those things became super invaluable to me. And it's one of the things that I have to say I am very fortunate to have gained that experience as a freelancer and kind of brought that, with me in my career.
So right now in your career, I know you said that you're at one creative studio in specific, and the name of that creative studio is called Malka Media. Looking at your IG and also Malka Media's IG, I also checked out their site and I noticed that they work with some big names. such as Netflix, Amazon, Acura, Showtime, Diddy, Imagine Dragons, and even Deontay Wilder. My question for you is, how did you end up joining Malka Media?
Yeah, it's just my experience, bouncing around, being to different places. It's just the same networking and kind of same growth as any other industry, really. So just kind of reaching out, networking, um, getting my resume, my portfolio, my website in front of the right people, and you get brought on for an interview, and if it goes well, you get an opportunity. And that's what happened with Malka. No different than anywhere else, really.
So you mentioned your website. So I checked it out, and I actually watched all of your videos. I think they're all pretty tight.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I noticed you have like what 4 sections in the video category, like original, branded, influencer campaign, and
Yeah.
commercial. Could you explain each one kind of?
Yeah, sure. So on my portfolio, I have it separated the way that you were referring to. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it is original content, branded content, influencer campaigns, and then commercials. And I set it up for that way for two reasons. But the biggest reason is sometimes in production, you can get put in a box. So you are a branded content producer, director. You are a commercial producer, director. You are a documentary producer, director. But I've never been one to be put in a box, and I'm ultimately that's not a goal of mine to be put in a box. So I want to make sure that I am able to kind of have my fingertips on as many different types of projects as possible. And I want to be able to showcase that. And it's ultimately what I want to be able to do with my career is to continue to grow in each one of those avenues and not really kind of cut myself off or be labeled or branded as one, but not the other. So I've separated my portfolio for that reason, but it's also nice to separate it for that reason. It's because just from the outside looking in, it's nice. They are all different types of projects. They're all different forms of art. So being able to kind of separate those art forms and being able to understand them individually or independently is also really nice. So a branded campaign is going to feel something different, likely, than something that's original, where there's no brand affiliation, no attachment. It's straight from your mind, the director's mind, the talent's mind, onto the film. Whereas a branded piece, is always a little bit of a brand affiliation that needs to be implemented. So it is going to feel a little bit different. Same to a commercial, going to have a little bit of a different style. To an influencer campaign, obviously going to be completely different.
Well, man, seeing 9 to 13-year-old moguls is mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was fortunate to do a series this past year that we called Mini Moguls, which was a 10-part episode on young entrepreneurs. So 18 years old or younger, the majority of them being considerably younger, who are making some serious cash flow, and took their entrepreneurial skills to the next level at a young age. And so we dubbed them Mini Moguls and kind of just did like a really fun 3 to 5 minute kind of profile, documentary, cinematic little beautiful piece on each of them. So if you do want to check that out, you can find that on In the Know or Watch In the Know or AOL. And if you just type in Mini Moguls on AOL, you'll find that, or in Google rather, you'll find it.
And like kids like Ryan Recycling and what's the girl's name? Isabella Rose Taylor.
Yeah,
That was so motivating. Like,
so talented, both of them.
man, like she had her clothing line in Nordstrom at 13.
I know, it's wild. There's so many talented people out there. She's a super genius too, which is
Yeah,
great.
I saw that. That's crazy. Like she's getting her bachelor's or master's.
Man, I don't remember. It was a while ago that we did her interview, but I think she was getting her master's at, from NYU online schooling at, however old she was,
18.
19. Yeah.
Man, I wasn't even thinking about that at 13.
Yeah. She's super talented.
But you mentioned In the Know. I actually liked that series a lot. How did that come to life?
They're a client of the company I work for. So it's just, again, it goes back to kind of that pitch process. The idea was pitched. And they looked to us to execute, and that's kind of it.
I really like the Johnny Brook Extreme Organizer video.
You like that one?
Yeah. I found it funny how he said his projects inside his house were simple. Like I'm like, there's nothing about that was simple.
Yeah, I know. Simple to you, but like super difficult for most people.
Yeah, like when he was talking about how he put like his electronics in the that the drawers that he made and then he creates slits for them. Who
Right.
thinks about creating slits while you're doing that?
Right. Exactly.
But besides that, I know you said you love interviewing people, and
Mhm.
you've interviewed some well-known public figures, and I just wanted to ask you, what was it like interviewing and working with people like what Ali Krieger, Ben Simmons, what Asia Wilson,
Yeah.
Anthony Davis, and what Josh Christensen?
Christensen. Yeah. Just
How?
to you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, what is it like working with them? Was that the
yeah,
question?
yeah. What was it like working with them?
It's fun. To be honest with you, I truly don't look at working with like a well-known athlete any different than I look at working with a regular person that we're doing a feature on. They're all individuals, and they all have their own unique personalities, and it's just finding kind of like the right tone or mood for the piece based on those personalities. But it's always fun to work with celebrities. It's always fun to work with people that you admire. And it doesn't have to be a big name to admire someone either. So the shoots are all fun. I mean, that's the best part of working in the industry is the shoots. But getting to interview people like Ben Simmons, Ali Krieger, um, the Lopez brothers, Brooke and Robin. Uh, to be able to do things with those people is fun, especially when you know that somebody like Ali Krieger who had like such a difference to so many people and so many young women in this country. Um, it can be fun, and it is really nice to be able to reflect on that sometimes.
Speaking of reflection, how many people can say, "Hey, I interviewed the number one draft pick of the WNBA and NBA,
Yeah, that's true. I actually didn't even think about that, to be honest with you.
or even like a World Cup champion?" Like, well, actually, you interviewed a World Cup champion and what, two Olympians?
Yeah, a couple Olympians, World Cup champion. Um, yeah, the Asia, Ben. Man, honestly, the list goes on. My brain is kind of not really firing on all cylinders early this morning with only one cup of coffee, but yeah, I have been fortunate enough to interview um, some really fun, really cool athletes.
Yeah, I'm gonna toot your horn for you because that's impressive. So yeah, like think about it. Like when you become older, and if having kids is in your future, like think about stories you could tell, your kid, like, back in the day, I was working and, I got the opportunity to, just interview these people. Like
Yeah,
that's,
and hopefully the story doesn't stop here, right? So
yeah,
I haven't reached nearly
exactly,
the goals that I've set for myself. So hopefully
exactly.
this is the part of the journey.
But there was something that you said that I really liked, and you said that, you treat the athletes or celebrities just like how you would treat, like, someone who isn't well known. And I think that's important in like today's age because at the end of the day, we're all humans and we all bleed the same, we all look the same, we
That's
all
it.
deal with the same issues.
Yeah, that's it. We're all just people. That's really it. And people just want to be treated as people too. You notice like one of the first things that I noticed um, when I started being around kind of some larger athletes and stuff is that being an athlete myself and being around other athletes um, really kind of helped me off the jump because I didn't treat the athletes any different than I would treat anybody else. Whereas so many people who aren't from athletics kind of see them as different figures. They're almost larger than life for some people. So right off the bat, I kind of had this advantage being a former athlete and understanding that mindset, understanding that locker room atmosphere, understanding what they're going through a little bit, and just kind of shooting the shit. So right off the bat, I did have an advantage as a former athlete to kind of recognize that. And at the end of the day, like I said, athletes just want to be treated as people too. Most of the time they don't want to be talked to like they're somebody. They just want to talk to somebody that's going to treat them like they are somebody, somebody normal. And so that is one thing that I learned pretty early.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you that, like interviewing, these people, like, doesn't it just remind you of when we played? Because you're seeing everything that they're doing, and then in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, I remember we had to do that. Oh, I remember
Yeah.
we had to
I
go to
look at
practice.
some of the stuff we did now. I'm like, man, I am so lazy compared to what we used to have to do for football. It's like
Three a
I'll
days.
never be as productive in my life, I don't think, as I was during that 4-year span at FAU.
And that regiment was crazy. The schedule, I'm like, man, like,
That's what I mean.
yeah,
'Cause,
it's good though.
yeah, really good. Definitely.
Because like you wake up, okay, workout. After that, breakfast, class, meetings, practice. Is
Yeah.
I I like it because you get the most out of your day and you don't feel like you wasted it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it translates, professionally as well once you get out of, once you get out of athletics. Uh, there's so much that I bring from being a former athlete into my professional life. And even if it's just something as simple as, reflection and just looking, being like, man, I did all that and that shit was way harder than this. It's going to be okay. Even if it's something as simple as that, um, it can be super advantageous to kind of look back at all that stuff.
Before I get to the next question or the next part of this interview, I saw that you work with Player Tribune. Man, I love Players Tribune. Um, that company or the media company, like that was part of one of the reasons why I started doing what I was doing, because I love the fact how Derek Jeter created an outlet that allows athletes to share what they're feeling, and it's taking out the middleman. And when I say the middleman, I mean, like, say a reporter from ESPN or some other sports media outlet, and you get to hear it from the athlete's mouth. And I think that's so important because the society, or like sometimes media outlets, they they jump to conclusions, and it's not even the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what Players Tribune did was revolutionary, and it's opened the door to people like LeBron with Uninterrupted and his barbershop talk. I think that what they did it was beautiful for athletes across the board. And Derek Jeter's not like as involved as he was now that he's with the Miami Marlins. Um, but yeah, absolutely. I think that everybody is attracted to the Players Tribune for that reason. What they did was really awesome for sports in general.
Could you break down what you do on a day when you have an interview or a project?
I mean, every day is so different. It depends where you are in the project's phase, whether you are in pre-production, about to be in production or on production. If I'm on set, it's totally different than if I'm just in the office on a pre-pro or post-production day. So every day is really different. So it is hard to say, but day to day, it's really going back to just kind of being that glue of the project. So it's making sure that things are ready to go from an execution standpoint when you're in pre-production. Being on point when you're on set, and by on point, I mean making sure that you're checking off those creative boxes that need to be checked off to get what you want, the best out of the piece that you're creating. And then if you're directing, making sure that you're getting all the shots that you want, making sure that you're working as close to the DP as possible, to make it look and feel the way that you're kind of envisioning. And then if it's in post-production, and just making sure that edit's coming together the way that clients expecting it, and working with the editor to kind of put their magic and put the puzzle pieces in place, and making sure that it's delivered to clients' expectations.
Is there one thing that you try to make sure you get in all your projects?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it's something that I try to do specifically with branded pieces. I've always tried to have a feel of optimism or a emotion that you take away from the piece that stays with you. So, yeah, I always try to bring a piece of emotion to all my projects. And I think I do that pretty well, actually. So, that is a really great question. And if you do watch any of my branded pieces of content, they all have like a kind of like uplifting or motivating message to them. And that's something that I really try to get across with all my projects is I try to inflict some sort of emotion from the viewer. And generally I try to make that um, kind of head out on a positive or an upbeat note.
I did get that feeling when I was watching your the branded pieces, like especially when you're interviewing the people with like the certain jobs that they had, like that lady who goes deep sea spearfishing.
Yes,
Like that
bro.
was cool.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite pieces, actually. That came out so beautifully. The editor on that piece, Wes, just absolutely killed it.
So speaking of interviews, I know with interviews there comes travel. And like I said before, I usually follow your stories on IG, and I noticed you visited a lot of places.
Yeah.
A couple of places that I've seen, which I wrote down, was Alberta, CDMX. Does that stand for like City of Mexico?
Yeah, that's Mexico City. So they're now refer to themselves as CDMX.
Okay. And also like Las Vegas. Can you talk about any traditions that you have when you travel to a new place for work?
Oh man, traditions. I really don't have any. I think the thing that I guess if you want to call it tradition, I'm like a coffee snob. So I never, when I travel, I never really go to like a Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. I always try to find like the local coffee houses. So that's something that I guess you could call that a tradition.
Okay.
But I really don't have too much of a tradition. I like to see and eat as locally as possible, kind of immerse myself into the culture as quickly as I can. That's like the big thing for me is I really want to see the local spots. So whether that means finding the local restaurants or finding the local coffee shops, that's really the first thing that I try to do when I travel is kind of immerse myself in that local scene as quickly as possible.
Isn't it cool being able to, travel to these places off of work? So then like you don't really pay.
Yeah, it is. That's one of obviously the appeals of working in film and working as um, a producer is the ability to travel and go to some cool places and not have to do it on your own dime and do it as a part of your job. So that is one of the appeals of my career, or one of the things that appeal to me most about the career I've chosen. And absolutely, it is really cool, and I am really privileged for it.
Yeah, I remember before I started teaching, I was actually a sports information director for a JUCO down here in Miami, and luckily the school, they were pretty good. Like in the volleyball, they were like national champions, like over 10 plus times. The baseball team, they had like over 80 plus players in the MLB and so on. And so around the time that I joined, I got to go to Utah, um, Las Vegas, Nevada, Wyoming, uh, Kansas, Idaho, Iowa, places that I probably wouldn't have gone if I wasn't working a job like that. And
Right.
I really valued those experiences.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to veer off of Malka Media and I'm just going to ask about you. So when someone sees the name of your company
Mm-hmm.
and they ask, what is Derek King Creations?
Mm-hmm.
What would you explain to them? How would you explain it to them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, King Dare Creations is the LLC that I created for my company. And what I do is I am a freelancer. I'm kind of a one man production company with a network of really great contacts. So it's working with different brands, working with different media companies, really working with whoever it is that needs a project, and then acting as the producer to execute and make that happen. So it is a production company, and I am that company.
Good. I just want to apologize if you hear me coughing and it's in your ear. Um, I just realized I've
Yeah.
been doing it, and
No,
I'm not
I never even recognized it. I'll be honest.
okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to apologize about that.
Oh, you're all good.
So, while doing research, I was trying to make sure I found as much information about you as possible. And I came across one of your articles from the Owl Observer.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, it was actually the one when you were talking about how the FAU stadium was going to help basically bring revenue to the
Yes.
school.
Yes.
Remember it?
You recall that? Yes.
Yeah. So my question for you is, are you doing other things outside of video?
I'm not really right now. That is a really good question. It's something that I have noticed. I've put a lot of goals outside of production on the back burner for the sake of trying to get to where I am with my career and trying to get even further as quick as possible. That is a big 2020 goal for me is to step outside of some of the things that been doing with just film production. I made it a point this past year to go take the real estate exam and get my real estate license. Um, I'm making it a point to do some other personal things and create some other personal goals, or see through some other personal goals rather. I think the biggest goal for me this year that I plan to complete is I'm going to start taking more immersive Spanish lessons. And I'm looking to become bilingual and fluent in a second language, and then create some more opportunities for myself.
Me too, man, because sometimes when I'm dealing with some of these students and I got to call the parents, and then I get hola, and I'm like, and I'm trying to have a conversation, I sound so bad. Like I'm using like a Google translator and I'm reading it like word for word, like I'm like reading for the first time. I'm like,
Right.
to however you say son in Spanish is, and I'm like, man, I suck. And then it's funny because then the kids they tell me says, "Oh, my mom or my dad say your Spanish is horrible."
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah, so that's one of my goals too. As a creative, I get inspiration from things like videos, posts, movies, books, etc. Where do you get your inspiration from?
Yeah, I think it's everything. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, you can draw inspiration from anywhere. A lot of times I'm motivated by my peers, just the people around me. I'm fortunate to work with some really talented people on a day to day. So a lot of times you get motivation through them or inspiration through them. But it really comes from anywhere, anything, and it depends on what it's about and who you're working with and the story you're trying to tell. And but it comes from anywhere. It really does.
Just to backtrack, I realized you said real estate license. I think that's a good idea. You're trying to get as many streams of revenue as possible, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
That's really good. You gotta always prepare for the unprecedented, right?
For sure. And I think you just want to set yourself up to kind of live the life that you want to live. And, I have a certain vision for, um, how I want to set myself up and the things that I want to do and the freedom and flexibility I ultimately would love to have with my life. And so you just kind of continue to chip away at that, and it may or may not work out that way, but that's how things go. You got to at least give yourself the opportunity to kind of move forward.
Yeah, it's good that you're at least trying, right? Because you don't have the regret like years
Exactly.
later. So, are there any dream projects that you're working on or would like to do?
I'm constantly working on dream projects and putting things on paper and setting myself up for kind of upcoming opportunities, or just making sure that I have things written down so I can continue to act on them. Um, I'm working on a couple of passion projects coming up, especially this summer. I'm doing one locally in New York. So yeah, I think then the next thing for me is I'm going to put together a couple of film festival projects, which I haven't done yet, and I'm really looking forward to doing that, and put together a couple of short little documentaries and submit them to some film festivals, and I'll be working on those both throughout this summer. As contingent upon life resuming some normalcy, but that's kind of next for me.
I've noticed, people, you know, win awards for film festivals and like they submit their projects. How do you go about doing that?
The same way you would any other project, really. You have a vision, and then you just bring on some people that are that see that same vision and can bring it to life. So bringing on the right people for the project, and then once it's done, you find, or sometimes you go into it in advance, knowing the film festivals that you want to submit it to, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you find them later on, and then you submit them and hope for the best. And then maybe that creates some really great opportunities for you. Maybe somebody really loved your piece, they want to work with you. Maybe a brand really loved your piece, they want to work with you. Whether you just make a friend, there's a lot of really great things that can come from submitting your projects to film festivals.
I noticed that a lot of your videos on Vimeo. Do you like YouTube?
I love YouTube, but Vimeo is just makes a little bit more sense for my portfolio. So not everything is on my website. So I try to use Vimeo as kind of that hub for all of my content.
Okay. So what are your top fives that you watch on YouTube?
Oh man, I don't know. I'm just gonna give a shout out to the show I work on right now on Mondays on YouTube. There's a show I work on called Morning Combat with Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell. It's um, a mixed martial arts show with two super talented hosts and Luke and Brian, super well respected hosts and Luke and Brian, and we break down everything from the UFC to all the different boxing affiliations, and Mondays are a lot of fun. So on YouTube on Mondays, Morning Combat, live at noon every Monday. So that's what I watch on YouTube right now.
Okay. I'll give you a couple of mine, and then I actually want to talk to you about martial arts because I see you're doing that.
Yeah.
So for me, I like Justin Odisho. I think like his tutorials on like creating videos, like with all Adobe cloud softwares. I think is phenomenal. I like watching YC Imaging. He's like a cinematographer, like a music director,
Hmm.
creative writing. I like Casey Neistat
Yeah.
and like Complex, and I like Vice Sports, like their mini docs. Like I love docs.
Yeah, I love Vice in general, and I think that Vice for so long did such a great job of being kind of the almost like the taboo news source that really dove into um, the the unusual, or the really newsworthy. And for so long, Vice was that. It was almost like it was fun to watch and read. And back when Vice was just a magazine, I don't know if you remember that, but
Yeah, I
uh,
remember.
yeah, but yeah, I love the content that Vice puts out myself. Yeah.
I listened to a podcast by NPR called How I Built This. Are you familiar?
I am. I love that podcast as well. Anything
Yes,
NPR does is like gold when it comes to podcasts.
yeah. And like in 2016, I think, or something like that, they interviewed the founder of Vice, and just listening to him and like like his come up and how he like became who he is. I think it was great. Like he was like he was an addict
Shane
before.
Smith.
Yeah, he was an addict, and then like he was from Canada, and he turned his whole life around, and I just liked his whole story. It was cool.
Yeah.
And and then like what you were saying about Vice, I like the fact that they go into the heart of like topics or like things that they cover. Like say for example, the drag racing. Like instead of just talking about it, they actually go find the people and get in the car with them and then go on the cop speed chase or whatnot. Like that's cool.
Right. Yeah. Vice for so long was like real true journalism. And now they've kind of like swung where they put out some stuff where sometimes you're like, oh man, Vice, if you guys were so respected as a news outlet, like now you're kind of diving into this stuff. And sometimes I'm like, but then like, but most of the time the content that Vice puts out is really cool. And I can't say one bad thing, about them for the most part, other than, uh, you know, some of the content I wish they just stuck to like that true journalistic integrity. But as every brand, they got to do some things to make money too, and just have some fun.
So let's go back to martial arts. I see you're doing jujitsu, right?
I am. Yep.
How's that going for you?
It's going great. It's I've been practicing for over a year now. It's been about a year and probably 6 months, almost 2 years going out. Well, not almost 2 years, but yeah, about a year and a half. And it's going great. I love it. I think it's one of the best decisions that I've made in my post-college life. It's given me that sense of athleticism again, that ability to compete again, the ability to be held accountable to something for both yourself and your peers. All those things. Just the culture of jiu-jitsu is great. Um, there's so many positive and beautiful things about the sport, and there's just so many things to look forward to as an athlete again. So yeah, I love it. It's something that I wish I did sooner, and I'm all in.
I was it's crazy because I was telling my wife about doing martial arts for about a year. And like what you said about the competitive nature of it, like that's something like that I'm looking for too because like you said, like you play football, I play football. So you still got that competitive nature in you and you still want to like let it come out. And I think
Right.
martial arts is real cool.
Yeah, it honestly is. There's really it's the first time that I've been able to find something that's allowed me to kind of feed that athletic fuel again since college has stopped. Um, and it's honestly something I wish I did sooner. I think that anybody looking for just like self improvement or just some more discipline or just looking to be held accountable a little bit better, looking to just feel more confident and comfortable in the day to day, or just looking for a different form of activity. I mean, it's honestly all those things. It really is. And the culture again is just such a beautiful one, and it is an art form, and it's fun.
So do they like do it by belts or is it
Yeah, jiu-jitsu is separated by belts, so white, blue, purple, brown, black. Um, but you roll and train with who you feel comfortable with. There's really no pressure in a dojo. Most of the time, white belts roll with other white belts, but as you get better, you start to roll with the higher belts. And I've always been, you know, competitive, and blessed to be relatively athletic. So, I've always pushed myself to roll with higher belts right from the start and, get as good as I can, as quick as I can. But there is no pressure when you train jiu-jitsu. It's kind of like learn at your own pace. Um, and, that's kind of the beauty of the sport.
what made you choose jujitsu over the other types of martial arts?
Well, jiu-jitsu is so different than any other martial art, right? I mean, there's no head trauma from training jiu-jitsu, but it's also probably the most practical and functional street martial art. So there's a couple reasons that I chose it. The biggest being that it was something that I could train in, compete in, um, and invest my time and energy in, and I also not have to worry about any further head trauma after playing X amount of years of football. So I think like that was like one of the first appeals to me, is that it was a form of martial art where I didn't have to worry about repetitive head trauma.
That is a valid point. I didn't even think about the head trauma part when it came to martial arts, but that makes a lot of sense. I will keep that as a reference when I finally make that dive.
Definitely. And like I train a Muay Thai from time to time as well, but I just stay away from heavy sparring, mostly bag and pad work, and then just stay away from the sparring. There's really no need for it. And if you are sparring, you just spar with a partner that you can trust and respect, and is not going to tag you.
Got it. Are there any books that you're reading right now?
There are a few books that I'm reading right now. I kind of cycle through books, or at least something I've recently started doing is cycling through books without actually finishing them. And I've never done that before. I usually read books from front to back. But I am. Right now I'm reading like 3 or 4. I'm reading a book called The Happiness Hypothesis. I'm reading a book called Third Cycle Theory. And I am also reading the book Sapiens. So I'm kind of cycling through 3 different books right now.
Okay. So Sapiens, I'm assuming that's just the way like of humans.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It takes you through like this whole journey, and not going to give any spoilers, but it's a really is an awesome book. It takes you through the whole journey.
I might check it out because I'm doing the same thing, kind of like you. Like right now, I'm trying to finish this Becoming Michelle Obama book that I've been reading for like 2 or 3 months, and it's bad. I need to be consistent, but then I'm also like listening to like audiobooks as well, where the $40 Million Slave. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a really good book. Are you familiar with it?
I am, yeah.
And I just want to brush up on my reading because I think it's important that you continue to learn about different things and not just about that one field that you have a passion for.
Yeah, I agree. Continue to expand yourself as much as possible, and be curious is the number one thing. I think curiosity over everything, honestly. And it's honestly, there's so much media out there now that it's like, I wish I was reading more, but when I'm not reading, I'm constantly listening to different podcasts. So
Yeah, me too.
um,
Would you mind sharing some?
I listen to every NPR podcast first and foremost, every single one. So I start my day by listening to kind of catching up with the Daily and Planet Money, and kind of catching up on those things.
Okay.
Um, and then obviously the Joe Rogan Experience, right? I listen to Joe all the time. So I really start my day with NPR, and I pretty much end my day with NPR listening to them when it comes to the news. And obviously, like the favorite for me is Joe Rogan Experience, and just all the versatility of all his guests and the way he interviews people, and all those things. I really it all resonates with me.
Okay. I'll give you a couple of mine that are just currently in heavy rotation. The NPR How I Built This.
Yep.
I like JJ Riddick's podcast when he posts them because he does them like sparingly, but like I like his podcast. CJ McCollum's Pull Up podcast is really good. I like Jamel Hill's podcast.
Yeah, Jamel's great.
Have you watched Last Chance U?
I have. It's one of my favorite shows.
Yeah.
But before we get off a podcast real quick, have you listened to All the Smoke?
All the Smoke. I actually had that as a question for you. I haven't. That's with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson, right?
Yeah, Stack and Barnes. You should check that out. It's a great podcast that my company co-produces along with Showtime Sports. Great podcast. Definitely check that out.
Okay, I definitely will check that out. I saw it on Spotify and I was like, like before I prepared for this interview, or even saw that your company actually helps produce it. I was wondering if it was any good, but
it's amazing.
I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, you gotta check it out. It's super unique.
I know, especially with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. I know there's a lot of hot takes on the.
Oh yeah, it's all the smoke.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
The title goes speaks for itself.
exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I saw on Malka Media they have like a sports agency.
Yes.
In addition to that, I saw they did a tour. I'm not even gonna try to say his last name,
Yeah,
but
that
they,
go. Yeah.
yeah, they did a video for him. Like,
We're
is
in
he
the
signed?
process. Yeah, we're in the process of doing something with him. I don't know how much I can speak to that, so
Got it.
I'll hold off.
I got it. I saw Malka Media and I saw that they had posted like a photo in Hawaii, and
Mhm.
then when I saw the tour video, I was like, oh, that's the photo, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, I put two and two together. I was like, okay,
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
yeah, super cool. One of my close friends, Mitch, is working on that project, and he's killer. He's so great, and so he's gonna make that awesome, I'm sure.
Do you get to work with Marco Sports sometimes on their projects
Malcolm
or
Sports and Malcolm Media, it's yin and yang. It's the same. It's the same thing.
okay? That's good then. Like I like that
Yeah.
because that would suck, right? Like if you had to be on this side and then you see them doing all this stuff and you're like, oh man,
Yeah. No. Fortunately, everything kind of works hand in hand.
that's good. That's good. So my last question for you, um, you know, I think everyone they are who they are because of you know their life experiences and who they had who helped them become the person that they are. So my question for you is, if you had 3 minutes to share with someone how you grew up, what would you say?
Man, that is more than a 3 minute question.
Hey, I got a lot of time.
I grew up. Uh, I'll say this gently. I grew up learning a lot um, about how I would ultimately want to be parented or parent later in life. Um, and so I learned to question things early, um, and I kind of carried that with me, and kind of ultimately just found myself a little bit, and figured out a little bit more of who I am. Um, and turn that into curiosity and continuing to ask those questions to other people and create some content through that. So I don't know. I kind of just took you on this kind of backwards journey, but if I could just describe like how I grew up, uh, I'd say I grew up in a environment where curiosity is really what I pulled from it.
I think that's good. So like you were raised to like always question everything, not just accept it for what it is, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That's good. Hey, I guess that's why you are in the field that you are because you always ask people questions, right?
Right. That's definitely part of it.
That's good. But Derek, thank you for taking the time out to do this interview. I really appreciate the gems that you did share, and I look forward to possibly doing something else with you again in the near future.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you reaching out. And I just want to say shout out to you kind of for doing your own thing and that entrepreneurial spirit, that hustle. I know it's probably not easy. But I just want to give you a quick shout out for doing your thing. Because it's going to lead to exactly what you want it to lead to. So shout out to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. If you made it to the end of this interview, thank you. Feel free to reach out to me via social media and let me know what was your favorite part of this interview. You can reach me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. All you have to do is just type in my name, Shaheem Sutherland.